The galaxy was on the brink of war. Humanity's desperate plea for survival echoed across the stars. Earth, once the jewel of a thriving galactic alliance, now stood as the last bastion of an ancient species, fractured, vulnerable, and surrounded by enemies. The alien empires that once respected Earth's potential had long since turned away, viewing humanity as weak and backward. Yet, as Earth's cities fell to the relentless onslaught of alien invaders, one truth became undeniable. Humanity was not finished. Captain Mara Solis, a seasoned military leader with a sharp mind and an iron will, had seen her fair share of defeat. But never before had she felt the weight of responsibility like this. She stood at the head of Earth's shattered command center, gazing out at the sprawling ruins of New York, now a smoldering monument to the planet's fall from grace. Her once pristine uniform was marred by dust and the blood of soldiers who had fallen under her command. It had been years since Earth's last great victory, and the weight of the past hung heavy over her. The planet's final hope rested in a fragile alliance, one that could save Earth or hasten its destruction. A coalition of alien species, each with their own agenda, would decide humanity's fate. Some, like the Aetherians, longtime allies of Earth, were willing to fight alongside them. But others were more skeptical, unwilling to risk their resources on a dying world. But the greatest obstacle wasn't the alien powers, it was the internal conflict between Earth's divided factions. The human race, now fragmented and broken, struggled to trust each other, let alone their alien counterparts. Mara's first task was to unite this fractured world, but that was no simple feat. She had spent weeks behind closed doors, negotiating with the leaders of Earth's most powerful military factions. The Terran Guard, the Fallen Reclamation, and the Rogue Commanders, all factions that had once stood as Earth's defenders, now bickering over resources and authority. The infighting was nearly as destructive as the alien attacks. But Mara had a plan, one that would require extraordinary diplomacy, calculated risk, and the utmost courage. The first step was securing the support of the galaxy's most powerful and unpredictable race, the Drakari. They were a warrior species, cold and calculating, with a history of destroying entire worlds they deemed weak. Their support could tip the scales in favor of humanity. If Mara could convince their ruthless leader, High Warlord Korak, that Earth's survival was more than just a matter of pride. She had no illusions about the difficulty of her mission. But Earth had no choice. If the Drakari refused to join the coalition, the galaxy's last remaining defense would collapse. As Mara sat at the helm of her flagship, the Resolute, a sense of urgency pressed against her chest. Every passing second was a chance for enemies to close in, for the coalition to fracture, for the dream of unity to slip through her fingers. But Mara knew something the galaxy's leaders had long since forgotten. Humans, when pushed to the edge, were capable of extraordinary things. Earth's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or weaponry, but in its unbreakable spirit. And if that spirit could be harnessed, it could forge an unstoppable force. "Captain, we're ready to initiate the first phase of negotiations," her communications officer, Lieutenant Ivar, said from across the room. He didn't have to say more. Mara stood, her jaw clenched, and nodded toward the holographic display. The future of Earth depended on this moment. The last crusade had begun. His sleek warship Resolute glided through the void, the silence of space thick around it, as Captain Mara Solis prepared for the most critical mission of her life. In the cavernous briefing room, a tense atmosphere hung over the gathered representatives of Earth's fractured factions and their newly minted allies. These allies, once thought impossible to convince, had shown up, for now. But unity was fragile. Each faction had its own agenda, and some members of the coalition were no more trustworthy than the alien invaders they sought to repel. Mara stood before the room, eyes fixed on the gathered leaders. The table was a battlefield of its own, with delegates from each faction seated on opposing sides, their gazes either openly hostile or carefully neutral. Among them sat Warlord Korak of the Drakari, his piercing gaze like two molten coals in the dimly lit room. His presence was an unspoken challenge to humanity's resolve, a constant reminder of how much they had to prove to gain the Drakari's full allegiance. "We stand at a precipice," Mara began, her voice firm and unwavering. "The Imperium threatens not only Earth but the very fabric of the galaxy. If we fail to unite, we'll fall one by one, until the galaxy belongs to the enemy. We have one chance to prevent that, and it's here. Now." The room was silent, each leader absorbed in their own calculations. The Drakari leader, Korak, let out a low, rumbling chuckle that sent a shiver through the human commanders. "You speak of unity, Earthling, but unity is a myth. Your species is fractured, divided. You can hardly keep your own world together. How will you manage the galaxy?" Mara met his gaze squarely, her eyes unyielding. "It's true we've been divided, Warlord Korak, but our strength lies in the fact that we can overcome that division. We've done it before, and we will do it again. You'll see, humans are capable of extraordinary things when we fight as one." The Drakari growled, unimpressed, but Mara could see a flicker of curiosity in his gaze. That was enough. Before she could continue, Commander Sigrid of the Terran Guard stood, her voice loud and defiant. "We've been fighting on our own long enough, Solace. We don't need alien help. Our forces are ready. We've kept Earth standing for this long. What we need is to strike now, before the Imperium consolidates their power." Mara's eyes locked on Sigrid. The two had clashed many times over tactics, but this wasn't the time for personal conflict. "You're right, Commander. Earth has fought long and hard. But what you're asking for is suicide. We need to be smarter than that. Our only chance is unity, not just with our own people, but with those who can help us in this fight." There were murmurs of agreement from some corners of the room, but others remained skeptical. General Tobias Klein, leader of the Fallen Reclamation, shifted in his seat. Known for his stoic nature and battlefield expertise, his support was crucial for uniting Earth's military factions. But his war-weary eyes showed deep reluctance. "You want to convince the galaxy to fight for us, Solace. Convince me first," Klein said, his voice tinged with bitterness. "We've lost too much already, too many good soldiers. The thought of fighting alongside those who've turned their backs on us, it doesn't sit right." Mara's gaze softened. She knew Klein's pain. He had seen the fall of countless Earth colonies, and the scars from those battles were etched deep. But it was precisely that pain that made him the key to uniting humanity. "We have no choice, General," she replied quietly. "We either stand together, or we die alone." Klein met her gaze, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he nodded, but his eyes remained troubled. "Then let's make sure this is the right fight." The room fell into uneasy silence, the weight of their decisions pressing down on them all. As the meeting went on, a series of tense discussions unfolded. Each faction had its demands: territorial rights, military supremacy, resource control. Some asked for guarantees, others demanded leadership roles. But despite the bickering and the accusations, there was a flicker of hope in the air, a realization that for the first time in years, Earth's disparate factions might be on the verge of something greater than survival. Mara stepped forward once more. "We've taken the first step, but the hardest part is yet to come. The Imperium is already advancing, and if we don't act now, they will crush us all. I'll lead the charge, but I need every one of you to stand by me." A hesitant agreement passed through the room. They weren't unified yet, but they were beginning to understand the stakes. With the fate of humanity hanging in the balance, they had no choice but to try. The coalition, still fragile and untested, had taken its first uncertain steps toward becoming something much greater. And then, just as Mara prepared to end the meeting, the ship's alarms rang out, loud and blaring. An urgent transmission, one she hoped she would never hear. A fleet of Imperium warships was closing in, faster than anticipated. The time for unity had come. The sharp, shrill alarm echoed through the corridors of the Resolute. The crew scrambled to their stations, while Captain Marisalis stood frozen at the tactical display. In an instant, the fragile unity of the coalition was put to the test. The Imperium's fleet, faster than anyone had anticipated, was within striking distance of Earth, its weapons capable of shattering the planet's defenses in minutes. "Captain, we have less than 2 hours before the Imperium arrives," Lieutenant Ivar reported, his voice tight with urgency. "We're outmatched. Our fleet can barely hold them off long enough for reinforcements to arrive." Mara clenched her fists, her mind racing. She had known this day would come, but not like this, not so soon. The coalition had only just started to organize its efforts. In the heat of the moment, doubts began to creep in. Could humanity truly stand against the Imperium's might? "Activate the fleet's emergency defense protocols," she ordered, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. "Prepare to hold the line. All coalition ships, position yourselves around Earth. If we're going to die today, we'll do it together." As the fleet moved into formation, the magnitude of the task ahead began to sink in. Each ship in the coalition was an embodiment of humanity's hope, a ragtag assortment of vessels from diverse alien species and human factions, held together by their shared desperation. Despite Mara's confidence, the truth gnawed at her. This coalition was barely held together, its members uneasy at best and hostile at worst. But Mara's immediate concern wasn't her fractured coalition. It was something far darker. A transmission flashed across her screen. The face of General Tobias Klein appeared. His expression was grim. "We need to talk, Solace." Klein's voice crackled through the comms. "There's something you need to know before we face the Imperium." "What is it?" Mara replied, her tone cautious. "We've been getting reports, strange ones. We've intercepted communications, old ones, encrypted from before the war." Klein paused. "It's about the Imperium. About them." Mara felt a chill run down her spine. The Imperium, led by a ruthless and enigmatic figure known only as the Eternal Emperor, had long been humanity's greatest enemy. But they had never fully understood the extent of the threat. Klein's words hinted at something far more sinister lurking in the shadows. "Explain," Mara demanded. "We've been looking into ancient records, human records, dating back centuries." Klein continued, his face taut with anxiety. "It seems that the Imperium didn't just invade us. They were looking for something." "Something?" Mara's mind raced, her pulse quickening. "What are they searching for?" Klein's eyes darkened. "A weapon. A relic of the old Earth. The kind of thing that could change the tide of the entire war." Mara's heart skipped a beat. The Forgotten Codex. It was a legend, a piece of human history that had been erased from the galaxy's collective memory. Ancient writings from Earth's first wars against the Imperium had been deliberately buried, along with knowledge of a weapon powerful enough to alter the course of galactic history. But to most it was a myth, a tale told in hushed whispers among the oldest factions. "We thought it was just a story," Klein added, "but we've traced its location. It's somewhere on Earth, hidden deep beneath the ruins." A flash of realization struck Mara. The Imperium's sudden and aggressive advance. It wasn't just a move to conquer Earth. They were after something Earth had hidden away for centuries. "We need to find it before they do," Mara said, her voice cold with determination. "If the Imperium gets their hands on it, we'll have no hope of survival." Klein nodded gravely. "I'll start gathering a team to search the ruins. But you need to understand something, Mara. This weapon, it might not just be a tool of war. It could change everything." Mara's mind raced. What kind of weapon could shake the very foundation of galactic power? And why had it been hidden? Earth had always been a peaceful world until its first brutal encounter with the Imperium. But the more Mara thought about it, the more she began to see that the galaxy's history had been rewritten. The weapon, whatever it was central to humanity's survival and to understanding the true nature of their enemies. The Coalition fleet, once a symbol of hope, was now surrounded by a new fear. They weren't just defending Earth. They were racing against time to uncover the secrets of a lost past, to uncover a power that had the potential to alter everything. The countdown to the Imperium's arrival was ticking down, and the stakes were higher than they had ever been. Mara knew that time was running out. There was no room for hesitation. They had to find the weapon, and they had to find it before the Imperium did. The mission to find the Forgotten Codex was now at the forefront of Mara's mind, more pressing than any battle strategy or coalition negotiation. The Resolute had deployed its smaller search vessels, and teams of human and alien soldiers had descended into the ruins of Earth's cities, looking for clues. The war against the Imperium would be won or lost not just on the battlefield, but in the hidden depths of Earth's past. Mara was pacing in her command center when Lieutenant Ivar approached, his face grim. "Captain, we found something." Mara's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "An ancient bunker. We believe it's the location Klein was referring to." He paused. "But there's a problem. The bunker is sealed, completely. And it's not just old, it's been reinforced. Whatever's inside, it's been protected for a long time." "Reinforced?" Mara asked, her voice tight with suspicion. "By who? And why?" "I don't know, Captain," Ivar said, "but I'll have a team ready to breach the perimeter in 30 minutes. Mara nodded, then turned her attention to the tactical map. The fleet was still positioning itself around Earth, preparing for the inevitable attack. Their window of opportunity was growing smaller with each passing moment. But if this bunker held the Forgotten Codex, the secrets within could change the tide of the war. They had to act fast. On the surface, beneath the wreckage of a once thriving metropolis, Mara and her team of elite soldiers made their way through the crumbled remains of New Chicago. The air was thick with dust, the remains of buildings like skeletal fingers reaching up to the sky. The planet's cities had been devastated in the early days of the war, but this place, more than most, was eerily silent, as if something had been erased from its memory. As Mara led her team through the ruins, her mind turned to the mission. The bunker was buried beneath a massive government complex that had been decimated in the first waves of the Imperium's invasion. Yet, somehow, it had been kept intact, hidden beneath the rubble, waiting for the right moment. "I don't like this," Sergeant Harlan, one of her most trusted officers, muttered from behind her. "This place feels wrong, like we're walking into a trap." "I agree," Mara said, her instincts on high alert. There was something unsettling about the bunker's location. It was too convenient, too hidden, and yet so heavily protected. Someone, either humanity's own people or the Imperium, had gone to great lengths to ensure it remained undisturbed. As they approached the entrance, a long-forgotten hatch hidden beneath an abandoned military vehicle, Dr. Lyriel, an expert in ancient Earth tech, stepped forward with a datapad in hand. "Captain, we're ready to crack it open," she said, her fingers trembling slightly. "But there's something strange. The security protocols are more advanced than they should be for this era." Mara's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "This isn't just standard encryption," Dr. Lyriel explained. "It looks like someone set up this system to activate after a certain threshold of time. It's almost as if they were expecting it to be found, just not yet." The realization struck Mara like a cold wave. Whoever had hidden the bunker had not only ensured it would be found when the time was right, but had also made sure it would be discovered by the right hands, by someone capable of unlocking its mysteries. But who? Dr. Lyriel's fingers danced over the datapad, and with a soft beep, the hatch slowly began to open. The team drew their weapons, every eye scanning the shadows of the darkened bunker beneath them. "Stay alert," Mara ordered. "We don't know what we'll find down there." The hatch creaked as it revealed a narrow stairway leading into the depths below. The air was cool, the scent of age and dust hanging thick in the silence. As the team descended, the shadows grew deeper, the bunker's walls lined with strange symbols and alien markings. Whatever had been hidden here was no ordinary artifact. At the bottom, a massive vault door loomed, its surface covered in intricate designs that seemed to pulse with a faint energy. There was no mistaking it now. The bunker was not just a place of refuge. It was a vault, a final safeguard to something too dangerous, too powerful, to ever be exposed. "This is it," Mara said softly, her breath catching. "We found it." Dr. Lyrail stepped forward once more, examining the vault's locking mechanism. "I need a moment to bypass this." Mara felt her nerves tighten. Time was slipping away, and the Imperium's fleet was closing in. They had to get inside before it was too late. The seconds stretched into minutes as Dr. Lyrail worked at the vault's complex locking mechanism. Her fingers moved quickly across the interface, but the sheer intricacy of the security system gave her pause. Mara stood at the entrance, her eyes scanning the room, alert for any signs of danger. "How long?" Mara asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the growing sense of urgency. "I am almost there," Dr. Lyrail replied, her voice tinged with the strain of concentration. Sweat dotted her forehead as she typed in a final series of commands. "There, it's unlocking now." The massive vault door let out a low, groaning sound as it began to open, slowly revealing what lay within. The team tightened their grip on their weapons, unsure of what they would find. For a moment, the air seemed to hum with anticipation, thick with the weight of discovery. As the door creaked open fully, they stepped into the chamber beyond. The room was vast and dimly lit, with large metallic structures lining the walls, most of which were covered in dust and cobwebs. But in the center of the room, resting on a pedestal of dark, polished stone, was an object wrapped in a translucent, shimmering energy field. Even from a distance, the artifact pulsed with a strange, almost otherworldly power. Mara approached cautiously, her heart beating faster as she drew closer. The energy around the artifact felt ancient. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced, a combination of power and age that stirred something deep within her, something primal, almost instinctual. "This is it," Mara whispered. "The Forgotten Codex." Dr. Lyrail stepped forward, her breath catching. "It's beautiful. But what is it? We've only heard rumors, ancient legends. Some even say it's a weapon. But—" She trailed off, her eyes wide as she looked at Mara, clearly unsure of how to interpret the object's significance. "We need to get it back to the ship," Mara said firmly. "The Imperium won't waste any time in attacking. If this thing can give us an edge, we need to understand it. Fast." But as Mara turned to leave the chamber, a sudden, sharp sound reverberated throughout the room. The vault door slammed shut behind them with a deafening clang, and the lights in the chamber flickered once, twice, before going completely dark. "Captain!" Lieutenant Ivar shouted from behind her. "What's happening?" The doors sealed. Mara's instincts flared, and she whipped around, reaching for her communicator. But the moment she tried to activate it, a strange, low hum filled the air, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the chamber, filling the space with its unsettling tone. It seemed to emanate from the very walls, from the artifact itself. "You have awoken me." Mara froze. The words weren't spoken aloud, but echoed within her mind, clear and impossible to ignore. "What is that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, her breath caught in her throat. Dr. Lyrail stepped back, her face pale. "That's impossible." There was no indication this was anything more than a relic. The hum intensified, and suddenly, the energy field surrounding the artifact flared to life. A brilliant flash of light illuminated the room, and for a moment, everything went white. When Mara opened her eyes, the artifact was no longer just an object. It had transformed into something far more significant. Floating above the pedestal, the artifact now pulsed with a vibrant energy. It took shape, shifting as though it were alive. A figure emerged from the swirling light, a humanoid shape that seemed to blur between solid and ethereal. Its eyes were glowing with an otherworldly fire, and its presence filled the chamber with an almost overwhelming sense of power. "You have freed me," the being intoned, its voice now clear and distinct in the room. "I am the guardian of the Codex, the last protector of humanity's greatest secret." Mara's mind raced. This was no simple relic. It was alive. And it had been waiting for centuries, hidden away, waiting for the right moment, or the right people, to awaken it. "Guardian of the Codex," Mara repeated, her voice steady despite the storm of questions flooding her mind. "What do you mean? What is this Codex?" The beam's eyes seemed to pierce into her very soul. "The Codex is a weapon," it said slowly, "but it is not one of simple destruction. It is a key to unlocking the full potential of humanity. The Imperium fears it, for they know what it can do. And now, the time has come for you to wield it." Mara's heart raced. The weight of the Guardian's words settled like a stone in her chest. The forgotten Codex was not just a weapon. It was the key to something far greater, something that could change the course of the war. But how? And why had it been hidden for so long? The beam's gaze softened, almost as if sensing her confusion. "You must understand, Captain. The Codex was created by humanity's greatest minds. It is a force that transcends simple battles. The Imperium's invasion, its reign, was no accident. You are not just fighting for Earth. You are fighting for the future of the galaxy. The power you now hold can unite all worlds, or destroy them." Mara's mind reeled with the implications. They had awakened something far more than they had bargained for. The fate of the galaxy rested in her hands, and the answers she sought were just beginning to unfold. The room seemed to vibrate with the weight of the Guardian's words. The Codex was no ordinary weapon. It was a key to something far more powerful, something humanity had buried away centuries ago. Mara's mind raced to process everything the being had just revealed. She wasn't just facing an ancient relic or a long-lost artifact. She was facing the potential to rewrite the future of the galaxy. But questions piled up in her mind. If the Codex had such power, why had it been hidden? Who had created it? And most importantly, why had it been sealed away for so long? The Guardian's glowing eyes fixed on Mara, as if sensing her turmoil. "You are the one who has awakened me. And now you must decide." Mara blinked, trying to steady her thoughts. "Decide? Decide what?" The Guardian's ethereal form shimmered, its voice reverberating through the chamber like the hum of ancient machinery. "The Codex has the power to unite or destroy. It was designed to bring balance, to harmonize the factions of the galaxy, or to wipe them all away if necessary." "Balance?" Mara asked, her voice a mixture of awe and confusion. "How can one weapon, one artifact, possibly do that? What is it that makes the Codex so dangerous?" The Guardian's form flickered with energy. "The Codex is not just a weapon of war, Captain. It is an amplifier, a conduit for the collective will of all those who wield it. When activated, it taps into the potential of its user, magnifying their abilities, their desires. A being of peace can use it to create harmony across the galaxy. A being of destruction can use it to annihilate whole civilizations." Mara swallowed, her throat dry. The stakes had just escalated. If the Imperium or anyone with the wrong intentions got their hands on it, the galaxy could be irreparably torn apart. "And if I use it?" she asked, her voice small against the immense weight of the question. The Guardian's gaze softened, as if offering a measure of comfort amidst the uncertainty. "You will be the one to wield its power, Captain, but the choice will be yours alone. Do you seek unity, or will you choose war?" Mara was silent for a long moment, absorbing the magnitude of the Guardian's words. The fate of the galaxy was suddenly squarely on her shoulders. Unity or war? Could she trust herself to make the right decision? Could humanity, fractured as it was, unite the galaxy under a banner of peace? Or would the temptation to use the Codex's power to crush their enemies prove too strong? Dr. Lirail's voice broke through her reverie. "Captain, We don't have time to deliberate. The Imperium is already on its way. We need to decide now." Mara turned to face her team, her mind clouded with conflicting thoughts. They were all looking to her for guidance, waiting for her to make a choice. "Do we have any other option?" Mara said, her voice low and resolute. She looked back at the Codex. "If the Imperium gets their hands on it, everything we fought for will be lost." The Guardian nodded gravely. "That is true. But remember, Captain, the power of the Codex is not absolute. It amplifies your intentions, your will. If your heart is bent on destruction, you will become a force of ruin. But if your heart seeks unity, the Codex will help you forge alliances, heal wounds, and reshape the galaxy." Mara closed her eyes for a moment, imagining the consequences of both choices. She thought of Earth, torn apart by war, a planet struggling to hold on to its last vestiges of hope. She thought of the allies she had gathered from across the galaxy, and the possibility that just maybe they could be united under a single banner of peace. But peace seemed almost impossible with the Imperium bearing down on them. The stakes were too high to gamble with their survival. She opened her eyes, meeting the Guardian's glowing gaze once more. "We'll fight, but we won't destroy everything in our path. We'll use the Codex to unite what we can and push back the Imperium." The Guardian's form shimmered with approval. "A wise choice, Captain Solace. The Codex will amplify your resolve. But remember, unity is not achieved through force alone. You must convince those who stand in opposition, those who have long feared or hated humanity. Only then can true balance be restored." Mara nodded, her determination stealing with each passing second. The time for indecision was over. The Resolute was ready. Her coalition was ready. And together, they would take a stand against the Imperium, not with the fury of destruction, but with the strength of a united galaxy. The decision had been made. Mara stood at the helm of the Resolute, gazing out at the vast expanse of space ahead. The Codex was now in her possession, its strange, pulsating energy resting in the cargo hold beneath her feet. The power it offered was undeniable, yet with it came the weight of her choices. The path to unity was fraught with uncertainty, and as she turned to face the stars, Mara knew the true battle was just beginning. The Imperium's fleet was still hours away, but time felt as if it were slipping through her fingers. Her mind raced as she recalled the Guardian's final words. "Unity is not achieved through force alone. You must convince those who stand in opposition." But convincing the galaxy's fractured factions seemed like an impossible task. Long-standing hatred, old wounds, and centuries of mistrust would not be healed overnight. Even now, Mara could feel the doubt gnawing at her. Was it truly possible to unite those who had always been enemies? "Captain," Ivar's voice cut through her thoughts. "We've received word from the front. The Imperium's fleet is gathering. It's time to make a move." Mara straightened, her resolve hardening. "Set course for the Cinder Nebula. We'll make our stand there." Ivar nodded, but his face remained tight with concern. "Understood. But Captain, are you certain? If we deploy the Codex as a weapon, we can strike first. We could cripple the Imperium's fleet before they even enter the system." Mara's expression hardened as she faced Ivar. "We will not use it like that. The Codex is not a tool for destruction. We have to try to reason with the other factions, convince them to join us. If we fight without their support, we'll be no better than the Imperium." Ivar hesitated. "And if they don't listen? What if the others are too entrenched in their own ways?" "Then we fight," Mara said, her voice firm. "But we won't give in to vengeance. We can win this war by uniting the galaxy, not by tearing it apart." As the Resolute made its way through the nebula's swirling clouds of gas and dust, Mara held a council with the leaders of the other factions, her strongest allies, those who had rallied under the banner of Earth's final stand. The fate of their galaxy hung in the balance, and the tension in the room was palpable. Ambassador Kayla, the leader of the Sylvanite people, a race of telepathic beings known for their deep connection to nature, was the first to speak. Her piercing green eyes focused on Mara as she addressed the council. "You seek unity, Captain Solace, but you must know this. The Sylvanite have been fighting the Imperium for centuries. Their rule is anathema to us. And even with this, Codex in hand, we are not sure we can trust the alliance you propose." The words hit Mara like a slap, but she held her ground. "I understand your hesitation, Ambassador. But if we let the Imperium continue unchecked, we will lose everything: our freedom, our worlds, and even our way of life. The Codex will amplify our strength, but only if we fight together. Alone, we will all fall." Ambassador Kayla's gaze softened, though doubt still lingered in her eyes. "And you truly believe the humans can be trusted? You are asking us to place our future in the hands of a race that has fought alone for so long." Mara's voice was steady, though her heart raced. "I am asking you to see us for what we are now, not the fractured humanity of the past, but a unified force. We are not asking for domination, only cooperation. Let the Codex guide us, but we must choose to stand together." At that moment, Admiral Jorik, the leader of the Vailori, a fierce and proud warrior race, interjected. His gravelly voice carried weight. "And if they refuse to join us, what then? Will you force them to comply, use the Codex as a weapon?" "No," Mara replied sharply. "The Codex is not meant to be a weapon of oppression. It will not be used to destroy or dominate. It is meant to unite. If we cannot convince our allies, we will fight, yes, but only as a last resort. I believe we can make them see reason." The room fell into a heavy silence as Mara's words echoed in the air. She had said them with such conviction, but she couldn't help but wonder if she truly believed them herself. The situation was dire, and the pressure was mounting. Could the galaxy's fractured factions really set aside their differences, or was this just a fool's hope? "Captain," said Commander Rilo, the human liaison officer and Mara's closest confidant, "we've intercepted more communications. The Imperium is closer than we thought. They will be within striking distance soon." Mara's pulse quickened. The time for debate was almost over. Their next move would determine everything. "Prepare for battle," she ordered, her voice steely with determination. "We'll deploy the Codex as a symbol of our unity, our commitment to peace. But if we must fight, we will do so as a united front. We will not be defeated." With that, the council members exchanged glances. The tension was still palpable, but something had shifted. Perhaps, just perhaps, the seed of hope Mara had planted was beginning to take root. The Resolute emerged from the swirling depths of the Cinder Nebula, its hull bathed in the eerie light of distant stars. The vastness of space stretched before Mara, and in the distance, the unmistakable shape of the Imperium's fleet loomed, vast and formidable. The time for diplomacy had passed. The galaxy's future now rested on the edge of a blade. Mara stood at the command console, her fingers hovering above the controls as she looked at the massive display in front of her. The Codex sat in the heart of the ship, its power pulsing through the ship's systems, amplifying her resolve. She knew, deep down, that the decision she made now would shape the future of every world in the galaxy. The enemy fleet was massive, but they were not alone anymore. She glanced around the command deck, meeting the eyes of her allies. Ambassador Kayla, Admiral Jorik, Commander Rilo, and even Dr. Liriel, who had once feared the Codex's power. Now, they all shared one purpose. "All ships are in position," Rilo reported, his voice steady but filled with the gravity of the situation. "The Sylvanite fleet is holding the outer perimeter. The Vailori are ready to engage on our command. The rest of the coalition is standing by." Mara nodded, her heart pounding. "And the Imperium's movements?" Ivar's voice came through the comm, sharp and urgent. "They're advancing, Captain. They've launched their first wave of fighters. They're confident, overconfident." Mara couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. The Imperium's arrogance could work in their favor. They had underestimated Earth and its allies before. Now, with the Codex, they would show them just how wrong they were. "Deploy the Codex," she ordered, her voice calm despite the storm inside. "Send a message to the Imperium, to the galaxy. This is our final stand. We fight not for destruction, but for unity." The ship's systems hummed to life as the Codex's power surged outward, its energy field expanding across the Resolute's hull. The energy crackled in the air, the full weight of its potential now made manifest. For a brief moment, Mara felt its power resonate within her, amplifying her own resolve, her determination to see this through. She turned to face the view screen once more. The Imperium's fleet was closer now, their massive warships lining up for an assault, but they had no idea what awaited them. "Captain," Ivar said, his voice strained, "the Imperium's flagship is preparing to launch a direct strike. They think they can break through our defenses." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Let them try. All ships, prepare to engage. But remember, this is about more than just firepower. This is about uniting the galaxy. We are not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for the future." As the battle erupted in the vast expanse of space, the Resolute and its allies unleashed their full might. But the Codex's true power was not in the weapons it could amplify. It was in the unity it inspired. Mara could feel the bond between the ships, between the races, solidifying in the heat of battle. The Sylvanite telepathically coordinated their movements with precision. The Valori warriors fought with unparalleled ferocity, their pride and honor melding with the Coalition's cause. Humanity's strength, tempered by years of struggle and sacrifice, was now magnified by the Codex's influence. But the Imperium was relentless. Their warships launched salvo after salvo, their weapons capable of shattering whole fleets in an instant. It seemed as if the Coalition's forces would be overwhelmed. "Captain," Rilo shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "They're breaking through our defenses. The flagship is almost within range." Mara's heart clenched. This was it, the tipping point. Either they would win or they would fall. And then, as the Imperium flagship loomed before them, the power of the Codex surged like a tidal wave. Mara felt it course through her veins, a sensation both terrifying and exhilarating. She reached out with the will of the galaxy itself, focusing every ounce of her energy into the Codex. Her mind merged with the collective force of the Coalition, the various factions binding together as one. The battlefield shifted, energy rippled outward from the Resolute, reaching across the stars like a web of light. The Imperium fleet faltered, their ships momentarily frozen as the very fabric of space seemed to warp around them. The Codex was amplifying something far greater than just physical force. It was amplifying their unity. In that moment, Mara spoke through the comms, her voice loud and clear, carrying the weight of 1,000 worlds. "This is the last crusade of the Imperium. No more division, no more war. We stand together, or we fall apart. The galaxy chooses its future now." The Imperium's flagship hesitated, its weapons powering down. The first wave of their fighters pulled back, unsure. It was a flicker of hope, a chance to turn the tide. And then, with one final decisive push, the Codex shattered the last vestiges of the Imperium's will. The warships fell back, their commanders realizing that their invasion was no longer an inevitability. They were beaten, not by force, but by the will of a galaxy united. The battle was won.